Hey, what's going on, folks? It's Mike here, and welcome back to my SDL3 game development series with the D programming language. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to get set up with Macs, specifically on Apple Silicon, so your M1, M2, M3, etc. processors that will work with the LDC2 compiler. Now, just a little note on this. The DMD compiler generally had it working just fine on Mac because Apple has the ability to translate x86 64-bit instructions to run natively on the Apple Silicon. Now, if you have an older Mac laptop that's just using Intel-based processor, you're not really going to have to worry about this. But regardless, I'm still going to show you in this video how to set up SDL and also the LDC2 compiler, which is the LLVM-based compiler for the D programming language. And this will allow you to just generate native ARM instructions for the machine. So we'll set up SDL3. We'll set up the LDC2 compiler, and I'll go through and make a few mistakes and some bugs that maybe you'll run into so you can see how to fix them. And otherwise, this should be the video that gets you set up on Mac. Now, if this doesn't work for you for whatever reason, you can check out my C++ series for other tips on setting up Mac. You can check out the other videos that I'll add to the D programming language playlist if I add some later. Perhaps if you're interested, maybe we can do stuff on the command line and so on. But this is going to be the general way to get set up. Now, there's a lot of other tools out there like Brew and so on that might be useful for setting up LDC and even the SDL3 library, so feel free to check those out. But in this video, I'll just show you downloading the framework file for Mac, setting up LDC2, and getting it to compile and run with dub in the bindbc.sdl libraries. All right, so that sounds like a mouthful. We'll take it step by step, and let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with installing and setting up the SDL3 library with the D programming language. If you're not aware of what SDL is, you can go ahead and learn a little bit more about it from the webpage here, libsdl.org. But basically, it's a cross-platform library that allows us to do all the stuff that we need to do across different platforms, like work with our keyboard, mouse, and especially for this lesson here, I'll show you how to set up a window. But you can also use other graphics APIs like OpenGL, Direct3D, Metal, since we're on a Mac here, Vulkan, and so on. And it's a really nice library. It's been commercially proven, and importantly for us, SDL is written in C, which means that we have bindings available. And today I'm going to show you how to set up a binding with the SDL3 library, namely the bindbc library, which is one that's been used by a lot of folks, and I've used it many times and has been proven to be relatively stable. Now, this SDL page is going to be important for us, and it has a really helpful wiki as well if you need help with getting started with various things and installation instructions, so we might pop over there. But anyways, that's the basics of what libSDL is. If you need more help with SDL, I have a C++ playlist here on other different topics, so you can check those out if they're not the same ones as a D video, including some videos on how to set up SDL on Mac as well, if you prefer that. But today I'm going to show you in one video how to do everything with D, and that'll be found in the D language SDL programming playlist here, where you'll find a bunch of videos here populating. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started here. Let's make sure first you have the D programming language. And I'm going to do a download here. But I'm going to, in particular, download the LDC, which is the LLVM-based compiler, which tends to work the best on Mac platforms, at least from my experience. The D programming language compiler, depending on when you watch this in the future, will have an ARM 64 target, basically, so you could start using DMD. Otherwise, Mac basically translates the code generated by DMD using a program known as Rosetta to the ARM instructions. So we want native and fast instructions, so we're going to go ahead and use LDC. So let's go ahead and download that, and we'll go ahead and get started. Now, there's a few different ways that we can do this. There is a script here, so let's just go ahead and try out this script here. I'll open up this window here, and let's go ahead and start downloading LDC. And let's go ahead and see. That should go relatively quick here. And again, there's a few different instructions that you can try out here. So LDC has builds for Mac with the appropriate architectures for our Mac machine. So that's sort of the purpose here. Otherwise, as mentioned, you can target x86 64 code with Rosetta. If that doesn't mean anything to you, that's fine. Don't worry about it. But you can also, let's go ahead and run this command here to source or activate the LDC compiler. Because if I just do LDC here, or LDC2 rather, it's not going to do anything until I source that command. Okay, so I should probably put that in my path to get that set up here. But now I'll see the LDC is running here, LDC2. and that means that we have the decompiler available. Okay, it's just going to tell us no source files, but you can check the version here with LDC. Okay, so there we go. And you can see all the different targets that we now have. So again, if you want to build stuff for iOS or these different types of things, this is why the LLVM-based decompilers tend to be very, very useful for that. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and perhaps let's put that in our bash RC file here, just so we don't have to type it out every time, and we'll have LDC available always. Okay. All right, so now that we've got LDC set up, we now need to set up the SDL library. Now there's a few different ways that we can do this. We can use the brew package manager to install SDL3. So brew, let's see if we have info on SDL3. And we can go ahead, and it looks like there is a version of SDL3, and we want to make sure this is version 3.2 or later, which it is. And that'll work as well. We can also install from source. I have instructions on how to do this again in my C++ playlist. Those are going to be the same. So setting up SDL3 from a DMG file or on the Mac, either one is sort of fine here. I usually prefer to install things by or rather from source. So you can do brew install SDL3 if you want. That's one option. Let me just go ahead and show you how to do it from source. I think that's usually the best option here, or the DMG file here. Let's go ahead and just show you that, and then from GitHub as well. So basically, the DMG file is what you're going to want for Mac folks, so you can try that. So give that a moment here. Let's see if this actually just installs here nicely. Let's just give that a moment to pop open. Maybe I'll just use the DMG file. And again, that's version 3.2.2, which seems to be working nice here. And typically, let's see if the install instructions give us some hints here. Typically, you just move this into your frameworks folder for the install. I've got to refresh on this just a little bit here. I think it's opening up my README file in Xcode. If you don't have Xcode installed, sometimes you need that for the various Clang compilers. So that's the idea. So anyways, yeah, this package contains SDL for Xcode and includes support for Mac, iOS, tvOS, and so on. So to use this package, drag this file here, that's this folder, into libraries frameworks. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that here. Let's open up a new Finder window. Oftentimes what I have to do here is use the go. Let's see if there's recent folders. Let's just go to a folder here, library frameworks. So you can just search for it, /library/frameworks. I'll go there. And here we are. Looks like I do have the SDL3 framework here. Let's just drag it in here and do the SDL3 install from scratch. You might have to type in your password to do that, no problem. Let's remove the old one just to get rid of it. And again, these are usually privileged operations. So that should be it here. So we should have that framework available here, okay? All right, let's see if there were other instructions in the README. We can look at those later here. All right, so that should be it here. Let's start with that. And if we have problems, we will build from source, or otherwise I'll show you how to build from source. Okay, so now how do we use SDL3 now with our LDC compiler? Okay, well, let's go ahead and create a project. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this with dub. So I'll do dub init. I'm going to call this Mac setup, something like this here. I'll use JSON. That's a fine description. Choose your license, copyright, and any dependencies. Now there isn't SDL3 listed as a dependency. For that, we should do a little search here under packages. And again, if I search for packages with SDL3, bindbc is the main one that comes up. Okay, there are a few others. If I just search SDL, that'll show up. But this is the main one. I think there are some other wrappers available. And in the playlist, I'll show you how to create your own binding if you don't want to use this package, but this just kind of makes things easy. So we'll use the bindbc package here. So basically dub add bindbc.sdl is what we want to use. So let's go ahead and do that here, bindbc.sdl. That's the only one we want for now, so I'll hit enter here. And let's go ahead and go into our folder here, and we'll see in the dub JSON, it should have that dependency listed. So you can always add this later or use dub to help manage that configuration file. Okay, so here's our project. Oops, I don't have that tree command here. I can list out what's in source. Otherwise, there's just an app file. And if I take a look at app, it just tells me, hey, I need to edit this file. So we'll eventually add in some SDL stuff in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and run dub here and see what happens. The first time you run dub, it's going to fetch that library so that it can install and make sure that it has the available dependencies. So let's just give that a moment to run here. Looks like it compiled, which is good news. And now if we want to see if it does something with SDL here, we should probably write a minimal little program here. So let's go ahead and let's see. So this is the file that it created, 003 Mac setup here. That's not a very great name here. Let's go ahead and change that in the dub JSON. Let's just call this like SDL example, something like that. That's reasonable. By default, it'll just give it that name here. There we go. Now SDL example. Okay. So let's go ahead and change here what we need here. Now, basically what we're going to need to do here is let's try calling some SDL function here, like SDL window, and we want to call like SDL create window, Mac dlang SDL3 window, something like that. The parameters, let's just set a size here, and then there's a parameter at the end here for SDL window always on top, because I want to make sure I see it and don't miss it here. Then I'm going to delay for 3,000 seconds, and then destroy the window. Destroy window. And I should do something like SDL quit here. And there's also some other flags that I should set as well. Something like, let me go ahead and look at the SDL init function. I think SDL, let's see, I gotta look at my cheat sheet, or let's actually just go to the SDL page here, libSDL here. Let's search in the wiki, index, SDL init, and you can just usually find examples like this here. SDL init video, SDL init events. Okay, SDL init video, and I'm going to OR that with SDL init events. Okay, so let's go ahead and write. So we save that here. Let's go ahead and give this a try here with dub and see what happens. So say, okay, undefined, a bunch of stuff here. Okay, so we have to find those functions. Well, where are they? Well, they're in our dependency, bindbc.sdl. Okay, now let's go ahead and try to run dub again. Okay, SDL quit was spelled wrong. Okay, so far, so good news. SQL. Thinking about something else there. Okay, and it says, program exited with code -11. So that's a segmentation fault. Why did we get a segmentation fault? Well, we haven't loaded our library yet, right? That was the thing that we had. Let's see if I closed it. I guess I closed it in our framework folder. So let's make sure we can find that. So how do we do that here? Well, we should probably look at the bindbc page here. The GitHub has information here on a sample. So we've added our dependency. Here's the, or the dub. You can do this statically or dynamically. Here's sort of a basic program that you would write out, which we did. And here's basically a simple example that loads the function's return values, right? So this gives us access to all the SDL functions. Okay, so we need to do something like this here to get things set up here. Now we'll also need this loader here, which does the job of loading the library. So I'm basically going to copy this code here. And in SDL on Windows, you might actually need to look for the DLL file. Mac and Linux usually looks in like some system paths, I believe, so it's not as big of a deal. It'll look in that frameworks folder, so you can go ahead and search there. But let's go ahead and let's add something here in our source directory. And usually I call this SDL abstraction. I do the same thing in my Linux video here. And let's go ahead and just paste this in here. And I just sort of have this code freestanding here. What I actually want to do, here's all the code. Let me make the window a little bit bigger for you. I'm going to put this in D in a shared static this here. Okay. Now what is that doing for me? Okay. That's doing something kind of interesting. Let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, shared static this. Where it's basically a module constructor. So if you're new to the D programming language, this might be new, but this will be basically called once in the entire program whenever I include this SDL abstraction file here. And it'll make sure to run these functions here because I want these to, I basically want to load the SDL library before my main function. Now I could, there's nothing stopping me from just doing this in my app.d file, but I kind of like doing this. And then what I'm going to do here, just to show you something a little bit different here, is I like to put my initialization code in here. Okay, so after I've loaded the library, if it's loaded successfully, usually what I do here is just come to the bottom and just paste this down here. Okay, and then I'll do the same thing. I'll create a module destructor, so shared static. Let me bump this up a few lines for you. And then the destructor with the tilde marker here. And this is where I'll call SDL quit. Okay, and we can write out something like quitting SDL. Okay, totally up to you, however you want to structure that. Let's import our standard IO library. And again, if you want to handle different things for Mac, you do like version, I think Darwin, I forget if it's Darwin like this, or maybe it is Mac OS X, something like that here. You can look up the version specifiers in D, but I think this is going to work just fine here. Famous last words. Let's go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of help here. So SDL init returns a Boolean value here. So we'll assume if this is true, let's just print out, since we've got the right line there, SDL initialized successfully. Okay, and you could do other things like print out the SDL version or something, which is handy. So I can get rid of this. Okay, now what I'll do here is just import the SDL abstraction. And let's go ahead and give this a try with dub here. So let's close those out here. Move back to my root folder where dub is. Try to give this a run. Looks like I still got this program exited with -11 here. So let's try to troubleshoot this. And this may or may not happen. I suspect this is an issue with the framework folder. I've had this happen a few times where when I install SDL, let's go to frameworks here. If you don't like open this folder or open the library, which let's see here, we want ARM 64-bit here. Let's go ahead and open this up, SDL framework. So two things can happen. One, let's see if I click on this, it says it cannot be verified from an unidentified developer. So it's basically not finding the library. So let's go ahead and just open. And then it's going to say to me, do I trust this? And I'll say, yeah, I trust it. Okay, so let's see if that helped at all in our dub. It's still giving us the segmentation fault there. So the other thing that sometimes causes problems is just within this XC framework. And you might have noticed that I already had this folder here. Let me try to move it into our frameworks folder like this. And again, I'm moving things around. So let's go into frameworks, and now I've got the SDL framework there. Let me go ahead and open it to make sure it's verified and whatever here. I've got the actual location here, which is good news. So let's try to give that a run now. SDL initialized successfully. The window maybe showed up somewhere. Let's see. If I do this here, it's probably on my other desktop. Yeah, it is. So let's go ahead and see, how can I fix that here? Well, I can probably just move this to desktop 1 here. You're going to see a bunch of I don't know, other stuff. So let's just go ahead and try to run this here. Maybe it's not sized correctly, but it is running. SDL should be fine to run here. So I'm happy enough with that here. Hey, you can see an article I was reading about why somebody else likes D, the D language. So anyways, that should do the trick here for otherwise getting set up with SDL. Just to make this a little bit more interesting, let's make sure we're looking at SDL3 here. Let's go to the index, and I think create renderer in SDL3. Let's see if we can find a window that'll actually pop up here. Let's go ahead and just do this. And again, I want to make the point here that since we're using the D programming language, what's cool is, again, it basically interfaces almost perfectly with the C code here. This will be a good example here just to show you what's going on here. So let's go into our source, our app. We'll make this just a little bit more interesting by pasting in some other code here. Okay, let's just paste in. We don't need the quit. We're not going to need the return stuff. Let's just grab some things here. All of this. We'll replace our window here just because I want to show you something cool and verify that this is the proper setup for you. Let's see, we don't need any of that here. I can make this window a little bit bigger here. Let's just create the window and the render. I don't need to do any of this stuff with the surface. Okay, that'll basically, if you want to load an image here, you can leave that in here. You can just kind of copy that example. But let's go ahead and format this here just a little bit. I want to maximize the amount of stuff we have on our screen. And we don't have the texture anymore, so let's just get rid of that here. And we don't need to destroy the texture anymore then. Okay, so let's see how we did there. I think that's okay. Let's go ahead and try to run this. Okay, undefined identifier null. What did I mean here? Null, null, null. Okay, and it actually caught an error here with the switch statement without a default. Ooh, cool. So again, this is one of the reasons why I like using D. It's just a much safer language from all things like memory safety to other stuff as well. So I'm just going to replace these here. In fact, I could have done a find and replace, but I just want to make the point here of what's going on here. All right. Switch, case. Okay, and we need a default, which I'm just going to make a break statement. Okay, it'll just break out of the loop here. So let's give that a try here. Deb. Okay, there we go. Now we got a window. Now I'm 100% confident that this is working. So anyways, I'll paste that in the description. I don't always put the code because I think you should type it out. But again, since there's enough code here and you're just trying to get set up, I think it'll be useful for you to see this. Here, let me get rid of the stuff that we didn't use. You can learn about that in my other videos for textures, but that's the basic idea. And then we have our SDL abstraction. So let's go ahead and open that up and show you one more time, just so you can do a screen capture if you want. You can get rid of this. I'll get rid of the comments here. Again, you can add other types of error handling if you want, but that's the gist of it, right? This is the important function here, loading SDL, finding the shared library that we just installed here. And then again, it'll do some error handling. That's the advantage of the bindbc library. And then we initialize SDL. And again, I do this so that I just don't have to think about it too much. But again, if you're building a game engine or a graphics framework or something, you might want control of when these systems are initialized. So you might want to do this in a different way other than relying on these module constructors. But I like these, and these tend to be nice for small projects, especially if you're just learning SDL. You can just basically include this project and then get writing your code here. Now, I guess I have initialized SDL twice here. Let's get rid of that. So make sure there's no bugs. But otherwise, this looks pretty good to me. And we've got the event loop and so on. And this is doing hardware accelerated rendering because it's creating a renderer and all that sort of stuff here. Right? We create our window, we create our renderer for the window at line 16. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, now the last thing that I'll show you, or rather talk about, is what if this didn't work with the framework? Okay, you want to try something else. You want to build this from source here. Okay, so basically what I would do here is I would go into SDL. Let's go ahead and copy that repository to clipboard. Let's again, you could try doing brew install SDL3. That's with brew. But the other thing that you could try doing is cloning the repository. Let's just put this in something called SDL3. Oops, git clone. And then basically what we're going to do here from that step of cloning SDL3 would be to build the library ourselves. Okay, and we could link to the library ourselves from D if we wanted to as well. And you can see what happens or how to link to that library in the location in my other SDL with the manual debinding. I show how to just do things just on the command line there, so that might be a hint. But anyways, I'll just show you how to build SDL here. Let's see where we clone that into. Let's make a build folder. You would go to build. You would run cmake, so you'll need cmake. I'm using version 3 or later usually is fine, 3.18. So run cmake. This is going to identify that you have a compliant compiler to compile the C code that is the SDL library. So that'll be the step here. And then basically what this is going to do is generate a make file for us, which will make these shared libraries. And when it makes those shared libraries, we can then install them to a known path here. Okay, so then this should have a make file somewhere in this directory. There it is. We also have this, so we can use tools like pkconfig. So I'll show you how to do that briefly. But let's do make. I'm going to do a parallel build J12 here. Let's see. It looks like we're just getting warnings. That's fine for our purposes, although I don't like warnings generally as a developer. Sometimes we have to live with them, though, especially on cross-platform code. But it built SDL3 shared. That's good news. And sudo make install. You might have to type your password. And that'll install the library. That'll install some other tools, so you can use things like pkgconfig, for instance, to see where in the world was SDL3 installed. Okay, it was in your user lib library if you need to link it. Now, if you need to link manually to D to do this, or rather to find the shared library, what you would do is something like dmd source file -l ones -l again for the file user local lib, and then -l, capital L to send flags to linker -l SDL3, something like that would do the trick here. Now you might have to add rpath and some of these other things. You can also usually get away with just doing pkg config and then maybe writing a little script or shell to add the capital L's in front of this or something. But anyways, those are some ideas of what you could do if things still didn't work. You should try to get things working in Dub, generally speaking. Let's see. The last thing to note here with Dub here, and this is also an important note here, is it looks like it's still building using DMD here. So let me see if I change the compiler. Dub, I think I do compiler LDC2. Let's see. So it didn't find that file, probably because we didn't run the source activate thing. Okay, so in order to just complete this picture, what we're going to do is use Dub. I'm going to select the compiler LDC2. Now, again, if you don't have the terminal activated, what you're going to want to do here is source, and wherever you installed things, probably in the dlang directory, I think just dlang LDC, the 1.410 build, and then the activate script. And again, that'll put our terminal in the LDC mode. And then I should just be able to run Dub here with the LDC2 compiler, which again is going to be the preferred way to compile until the ARM code generator for DMD is complete. So anyways, now we can see our window here, and we can see that it's doing a debug build using LDC2, and it's doing the ARM architecture, or AARch64 here, which is probably what you're going to want to do for native performance. So with that said, you now have the LDC compiler up and running and building our SDL3 application.